morning, everybody. John Fielkley here for GAI Insights, bringing you thoughts in your head, time in your day, rating articles essential, important, or optional for AI leaders. Hey, if you want to follow along, go to gaiinsights.com/articles, and you can see the articles there. And today we've got Tim, we got Paul, Ankash, and Luda. All right, interesting articles today. Everything from a psychological profile from the Harvard Business Review in terms of how to make your workers less depressed when they adopt AI, all the way through some giant Chinese models, and one of them doing some very interesting stuff in video. All right, Ankash, if you take us through the first article, please.
So thanks, John. So the first one that we have for today comes from the New York Times, and it is titled OpenAI is making the mistakes Facebook made, and the author has quit due to that.
Yeah, very interesting. Ex-OpenAI researcher here saying that, here's the news. Silicon Valley companies might push the truth a little. What do you think here, Tim?
Yeah, I think this is, I gave this an important, not an essential. I could be argued into essential, but Paul will say, well, they're already way too busy to read crap like this. But I think it's important to understand what these firms are doing at the very least. It's important that a top researcher leaves publicly like this. But the day-to-day impact of this is like you didn't think this was going to happen. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg is one of the richest people in the world, and he's the target of an analogy here, which I think is correct. You could say the same thing about the people who run Google. They start out with good intentions, don't do evil, blah, blah, blah. And by the end of the day, they're looking like every other corporation and exploiting every last cent they can get from consumers whose psychology they understand much better than most consumers themselves. And the point here that was made is that chatbots are much, much, much more intimate, is the word I would use. It's very hard to tell them differently from a human. For those fans of Danny Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, our lizard brain, System 1, can't help but recognize these things as anthropomorphized and human, and therefore it's even easier to manipulate people into buying things they don't need to buy. And that's where we're headed, and it's no surprise.
Well, that's an uplifting. What do you think? What do you think here, Luda?
I was actually reading it, and it's very sad. Tim is right. We are going to get there. We are getting there. Certainly, the consumers that don't understand the psychology will get manipulated, and so it's a very sad thing. But I don't know what you can do about it. So this person quits. He doesn't want to be involved in this, and I understand that. But I don't know. It's a message, but I don't know. I feel it's optional. It's a reality. Maybe I can be argued into important to just make people aware that that's the case, but I'm optional.
Yeah, I don't. Not that it matters, but I think it's a she, not a he. Zoe.
Correct. Sorry.
Paul, where are you on this?
Well, let's be really clear. We had the Anthropic safety person quit 2 weeks ago. Now we have the OpenAI person quit. I think that's the notable news. And if the article mentioned both those strongly, I would encourage essential. But I had this as important here. It's very clear what's happening here. Zuckerberg's got a $200 billion revenue machine. Everyone's following that model. And all AI leaders need to be eyes wide open. Now, if they haven't had their eyes wide open yet on this, shame on them. But this is a continuation of a trend that's depressing and sad, but the reality.
And so, optional, Paul?
I had important. I can support.
Okay. Akash?
I was between essential and important, John. From an AI leader perspective, they are too busy with adoption to read this. But then again comes the fact that we have seen this happening with social media, and it's the same thing all over again. So from that perspective, it's important that they know about this. So I settled for important.
Yeah, I was going to give it important as well. What I like about what she does here is she at least puts in some analogies to other possible solutions, like where you might, keep the customer differences in data and so forth. And it's interesting. You can't. There's so much money and effort. I think obviously on the part of the hyperscalers, who are the most profitable companies in the history of humankind, and the biggest donors to the political campaigns around the country, so and the world for that matter. You look at what Musk is doing in the UK, for example. So it's anyway. I think it's a trend. I would hope we can muster a bigger set of people really going after it. Things that you've said over the years, Tim, and so forth. Anyway, important for our editor.
But John, let's be clear though. I mean, this has been true before the age of AI with social media, and corporate America did nothing on it. So,
absolutely, absolutely.
That's why I'm saying, what's news about here? Yeah, they quit that. Yeah, so this.
Well, and even Google's advertising before social media. This is yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and I agree with you, John. At least Zoe made some good points about ways this might be addressed. So and I agree with them. They're not bad ideas, but we'll see.
Starting under Reagan, any regulation on media started to go down. It's not just social media. I mean, you look at media concentration. You no longer have to do public service announcements. Just the ability for a foreigner to own massive amounts of our media. Only 5 companies own all the broadcast media. So yeah, there's I think this is part of a bigger withdrawal of regulation from media in general. And I think this is being regulated as media, and I think it's a much more powerful medium than simply media. Anyway, on that depressing note, we're going to number 2.
Well, and John, it's way bigger than the U.S. obviously as well. I mean, it's globally influencing political elections and everything else.
Yeah. But I mean, yes, but these if the regulation is going to hit these folks anywhere, I think having it hit in the U.S. would be the place to start. Because anyway. But I'm not going to do that today. Of course, J.D. Vance may read a biography of Teddy Roosevelt and wake up and be a progressive.
Not hold my breath on that one.
I wouldn't hold my breath on that one. Next.
Okay, the next one comes from Versil, and it is titled "How We Built AEO Tracking for Coding Agents."
Yeah, very interesting. Luda, what'd you think here?
Yeah, so I rated it as optional because it may be important, but for the AI leader, that's one would assume that this is happening, and it's happening. So people who don't know Versil, it's an AI cloud. So they built the tools for developers to essentially use the cloud and have all the tools, the development environment that you can easily monitor and push your applications into the cloud and run them there with monitoring and the like. So very used platform. Just raised $300 million on an almost $10 billion valuation. So it's a good known platform. So what they did, in addition to AI engine optimization tools, they now built an environment that includes the coding environment that the coder coded the app in, the file system, the shell. So you put it in there, and then you could track agents in addition to just regular calls. So it's a progression on how do you make this auditable and transparent, how to make agents transparent and the like. So I think it's important development in general, but for this audience, I think it's optional.
All right, we got an option from Luda. Tim.
Yeah, optional for me. Interesting if you're a technical person to read what they did, because it's an interesting approach. But the real issue wasn't even addressed. The title is about, and the idea is that these agents respond differently than normal LLM queries, and so your AEO, or whatever it's going to be called, needs to account for that. So what they gave was a tool that could provide transparency, but still not account for it. I think this is going to be just included in AEO services that are going to develop. And so as an AI leader, that's what I want. I want an AEO service that will take the whole gamut of things that I need to do to make sure that I'm on the radar of these systems in the right way.
All righty. So optional on this guy,
Yes, optional.
Akash,
From John.
Paul,
Optional.
optional it is. All right. Next, please.
Okay, the next one comes from our friends in China or ByteDance, and they have released Seed Dance 2.0.
Yeah. What'd you think about this, Akash?
So I was important on this one, John. So CTANS 2.0 is ByteDance new video creation model. There was CTANS 1.8 before this. It's a multi-model audio plus video generation architecture. So basically, you can generate both video and audio with this, and you can give it multiple text, images, video, audio to generate those videos. Uh, this has been getting a lot of publicity on X. At least people are developing all sort of things with this, and it has very movie-like quality, great control, and it provides 15-second outputs. Let me just share a video that someone created through ByteDance here, so it's not playing. Okay, so this is Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise fighting in a movie scene, and it was generated by CDance 2.0. So very realistic, very movie-like visuals, etc. So I think this is an important news for people who want to use these video generation models or multi-model models. So that's why I was important on this one.
So Akash, on this one, do you know if it has Brad Pitt's voice and Tom Cruise's voice as
Yes.
well? Yeah.
Yes, John. Both
Yeah.
their voices, and they have very good similarity with their voices as well.
Yeah, I bet the American models wouldn't let you do this with the possible exception of Grok, but in terms of copyright. But so you're giving an important basically on the phenomenal quality, if I understand.
Right.
Because there's a lot of models out there. All right, making the case for important. Paul, what do you think? Product announcement? Important?
It just the everyday miracle speed and video is just breathtaking, but it's a product announcement, so optional.
They go from Paul. I knew that was going. Luda?
Yeah, I was optional on that for a different reason. I agree with Ankash. Technically, this is a leap forward. But operationally, how are you going to put it out there? So the environments that they suggest, all Chinese, and it's, yeah, you can do it, but I think it will not have a broad adoption. Ankash might disagree with me, but I just think that you need to be very careful using it.
Yeah. Hey, Luda, I think companies need the open claw equivalent for video. They should set up their own
Right.
thing that's all Chinese, creates videos, and then sends them over every now and then to the marketing department.
So you need a protection layer, and that's not quite easy to get. You need to build it, and that's why it's a barrier to adoption.
And Luda, there are platforms already in place, US-based companies who are offering these Chinese models on their platforms, and they charge you a fair amount, but you can generate all those videos from this. And I think we are already seeing great adoption in at least advertisements from all these Chinese models as well. So for that reason, I was important. It has great use in advertisements and marketing, and maybe by the end of this year, we will see a full feature film being built through these set of video models.
Yeah, it's currently 15 seconds. But for ads, Paul, if you adopt a certain platform, US-based, you can differentiate your products and the like with this type of video. The innovation and the level of quality is very high.
All right, Tim. IO.
Optional for me. It is an everyday miracle and a big advance, but it is a product announcement, and I think this is going to be a leapfrogging thing. People are going to figure this out. If they go open weights, then which I think they are actually, then as Ankash says, there'll be utilities in safer spots that you can make use of. So for people, I agree, for anybody in video generation marketing, it's probably essential. Keep track of this stuff because this is a real leap forward in taking in multimodal inputs and in total control. But it's still, you still have to be what I refer to as the master craftsman to really use these things. So it's a pretty limited audience right now. But eventually, yeah, I think these things are going to get to the open claw stage. And there was another article that we didn't review here, which I'm not even sure. They got in a little trouble, these guys, because apparently they're trained so well on the stuff that they did that if you put a celebrity's photo in there, it can immediately do the voice. So there's a dark side to all this stuff too, is another aspect of it.
Who owns your face, baby? All right, I'm going optional on this one. Thank you, Akash. Next.
Okay, the next one is again a Chinese model. This one comes from Zipu AI, and it's the LM5 next generation large language model.
So, and multiple experts here. What do you think, Tim? 754 billion parameters.
Well, this Zifu, which is Z.ai, is the easy way to find them. These folks are top notch, as are many of the research organizations and production organizations in China. We've been saying this for a long time. These folks are state of the art. I'm going to give this an optional. I'm between optional and important. The reason I think it could be important is because they train this thing entirely on Hawaii chips, no NVIDIA involvement at all. But you could also argue DeepSeek did that a couple of years ago. So, but this is a much more nearer to a frontier level performance. It's aimed at agentic programming and development. So, the benchmarks are compelling, and it's going to be MIT license open weight. So this is a real threat to OpenAI and Claude and Gemini. But
So
it is a product announcement, and it's a potential threat, is what I should say. We'll see how it develops.
So Tim, you put them at parity. Most of the stuff I read in the opinions.
Almost. Not at parity. 80 to 90%. Okay. So the question is there a Pareto here? A Pareto's law, an 80% rule that says, well, if it's 85% as good as GPT 5.2 or Claude 4.6.
Yeah.
And it's basically free,
Yeah.
that's pretty compelling, right?
Yeah. Luda, what do you think?
It is compelling. Tim is absolutely right. I rated this, though, optional because it's not yet out there. It's a product announcement.
Right.
We really don't, we don't know where it would land. So far.
If you're interested in the Chinese-US race, this is essential because the fact that they built this good a model with no involvement from any US manufacturer of chips is notable. Yep. But it doesn't really affect the day-to-day activity of an AI leader at that level.
Yep.
What do you think, Akash?
What was important on this one, John, it's available on Hugging Face. You can right now go to Hugging Face and use it. But I agree with them. It's a product announcement. But ZAI, they are the first publicly listed LLM company. So they were listed, I think, last month in China. And interesting thing is they have increased prices on this one. If you want to use it through their platform, they are trying to increase their gross margins. So just an additional information, but yeah, it compares very well to our set of US models. So as Tim mentioned, they are 80 to 90% there, and still the cost is really less compared to our set of models. So if someone wants to experiment with them or they are looking for other set of models, might be important.
Paul?
Optional, good discussion, optional.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead with important on this one. The reason is that, so many people are focusing on, the frontier model and how much the non-Chinese models, basically American models, are ahead or whatever. I think the real issue here, I think that these model economics are going to look a lot like silicon chip economics. And what I mean by that is that there's a profit profile that's available to an innovation. And so in the old days when Intel did the 486 chip, right, they would say, okay, well, we're going to be able to price it high for this amount of time and this amount of volume, and then they go down. And what the Chinese are doing is they're truncating that profit profile. So you make all this investment, you're out, having subscriptions and so forth, they're selling your model, but they're truncating the tail of that because, that I think economically, Tim, that's how Pareto comes into the profitability of these markets, right? It collapses the longer tail. So that makes it much more acute to harvest whatever profit you have on the incremental innovation sooner. And back to what we're saying about OpenAI, it's going to really increase the incentives for aggressive advertising and any other kind of monetization they can get, because the profit profile is short. The half-life of profitability is coming down, if you will.
Yeah. Yep.
And
although one could argue that, Microsoft sells a lot of Azure SQL Server and lots of other things. Oracle sells a ton of database in the cloud, even though Linux and DynamoDB and Postgres have been available now for 20 plus years, and it hasn't affected the share all that much at all.
Yep.
So it's unclear how it works out.
Yeah.
Total cost of ownership. There's lots of issues, but yes, I agree. It shrinks that window, and we've been saying for a long time that it's not clear where OpenAI and Anthropic and these other firms end up. It's just not clear.
Yeah, and also, I think reinforcing your point is the fact we're not enforcing antitrust. So if you're a surviving oligopolist, you can recapture that profit, right? Anyway, important news. Next.
Okay, the next one is a case study which comes from AWS and is titled "Swan provides generative AI to millions of IoT devices using Amazon Bedrock."
Yeah, a little creepy what this is doing here, in my opinion, but what do you think? It reads pretty much like an Amazon commercial. But what do you think, Luda?
Well, yes and no. I think this is a AI at scale producing some really good value. So Swan manages 11.7 million cameras. And the problem they were solving, that cameras, meaning IoT devices, that if you have a camera in your house or you're monitoring cables or whatever you're monitoring, you can get a lot of signals that are not really good signals. Like my camera says, "Oh, I saw a human," and it creates a lot of noise. So that's the problem they were solving. And they put together quite a good system, yes, using AWS and all the components of it to categorize those signals and put them in buckets, process them, and then limit the number of messages and their intelligent messages now. So the results are quite impressive. With a very low latency, the reduction in the noise, and so in general, this is a really good case. What I liked about it, and I'm between important and essential on this one, they talk about how they tuned the system for the latency, for the cost parameters, and quality, how they increased the relevance and increase user satisfaction quite well. So I feel this is an operating case at scale with quite good explanations. So important to essential for me. I'd probably leaning to essential.
Yeah, I think what were the statistics? The false, basically saying, hey, this is someone or not threatening or whatever, went from what 80% down to 20% in terms of false alerts or something like that. I mean, significant. Yeah. Very, very kind of creepy. Remind me of the Karen Reed trial, where you just the ambient capture of our private. I mean, your privacy is so gone. It's not funny. Anyway, Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, I had it as important. It is in a sense a product announcement at one level, and from the Swan people, and as you said, it's kind of a commercial for Amazon. But I don't mind that because it's well documented. And this is a new kind of use case where not a lot of people are connecting IoT devices. So this is a good structure if you need to collect a lot of streaming data from IoT devices and then deal with it. And alert fatigue is a well-known problem across lots and lots of places. So it's pretty scalable in terms of the idea. I actually screamed at a bunch of people in a room 25 years ago now when everybody wanted to roll out electronic health records. And I could just see this right away because I've been through this so many times. It's like, I think most software designers should be forced to take some biology classes, because when you get more sensitive sensors and you get a lot of information, this is the problem you immediately have. You have to organize that information and filter it and sensitize it so you don't get overwhelmed. And so this is a good approach at doing that. So I gave it it's a good use case.
And I think it actually generalizes to just data parsing.
Yeah.
Right? So it doesn't need to be IoT necessarily. When you have the data, it talks about categorization.
Yeah, any kind of streaming data, especially, right, where you have a lot of data points.
So that's why I was leaning towards essential, and does a good job of saying how they did it with some best practices they saw.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the increasing virtualization of the value chain, right, more and more of computing's, the granularity and the fidelity and the frequency of stimuli is increasing. So as you say, and it's increasing a lot. It's going up more than linearly, I think. But in terms, so notion of where do you put the intelligence to dampen the propagation of signal is going to be a critical part of how you manage organizations. And so, Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, good discussion. I thought it was important here. I'm actually surprised we haven't yet seen more kind of real-time monitoring of audio at retail stuff. You think of Starbucks, they can monitor all the audio for all the customer actions and start getting reports on which ones are angry customers, and start anyway. I think I'm with Luda. The notion that we're getting cost-effective ways to grab data in so many different ways in a society that doesn't care about privacy anymore opens up a huge opportunity for cost-effective, more real-time monitoring in different use cases.
Yeah, I hear you, Paul. I mean, I hope that we do, find our privacy backbone again a little bit. But I think that the notion of, what is a public space and what's a private space and who can sample and who can analyze is, I think totally on the table. And I got to believe, if you read some of the things that Palantir enabled the government to do with their platform, I wouldn't be so sure you're not being monitored in Starbucks. Maybe not Starbucks is using it. Ankash?
I was essential on this one, John. I think this is one of the best case studies that we have discussed in a while. It has everything, and it's a great use case as well in the physical environment. So for that reason, essential.
Yeah, and John, this is the cameras are not in the public spaces, right? People invited them into their houses and well, right. So they're not violating anything. They're
but if I'm walking by, come on. I didn't agree to that.
But don't walk by. You're not
come on. It's my duty to not be on a public street because you.
What's the difference? What's the difference between the cameras that are already capturing you in audio?
No,
they're already capturing you on camera. You didn't agree to that either.
I understand, but this particular use case.
There's a million, there's 100 million Ring and other kind of doorbell cams. Every time you walk by a series of houses, you're on camera.
Yeah, just
you didn't agree to that.
No, just because I didn't. Just because they invaded my privacy and I didn't do anything about it doesn't make it right or not.
I agree. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
I agree.
Okay. Essential it is. Beware the overlord. Okay, that's where we're going. Last article. Okay. Why Gen AI feels so threatening. So I think I'm on this one. This introduces a set of, if you go down to the three things that their research shows that, people feel, if their competence is, respected and, their autonomy is respected, they're going to be more motivated. Then it puts an aware model in, which is to be, I forget what aware, willing to do things differently. Understanding of what the people's concerns are, willing to do things differently, work with them to do to change the work environment. I mean, to me, this is, I'm going to give this an optional. I think that I was looking for more. They cite some okay research on, different. One is the Wharton study that looked at AI adoption. One of the authors is a co-author on the AI adoption study from Wharton. And so they cite some interesting things there. They cite some interesting things about how leaders really believe that they need to transform their organizations to make this happen. I didn't find this particular analysis of what the motivators were for individuals and then what their model is in terms of aware very helpful, because I think the problem with a lot of psychological models is that they leave off one of the biggest and most obvious finding, which is who gets the benefit of AI. If you start cutting your workers into AI in terms of the economic return, you pay them more, you put them up, you give them equity in the company that's improving, they're going to do a lot more to make it work. And it amazes me how somehow we've taken the whole notion of, give some of it back to the labor, kind of off the table. And the problem with that is that a friend of mine, Joe Fuller, looked at a lot of transformational, incentive work and so forth. And, he came back with what he would say was the obvious, which is pay him more. Guess what? They'll help you out. So for that reason, I give it an optional. But what do you think, Akash?
I was slightly important on this one, John. So I agree from a employee perspective, those three things that they mentioned about competence, autonomy, and the other thing. I think leaders might need to understand how employees are feeling in the organizations right now with the use of AI. And this provides a nice overview of that. I agree with you on the model side of things. The aware model that they have shared, it doesn't do much to improve the plight of things. But still, for those three things, I think I can live with important.
All righty, we got an important. Tim, where are you?
I'm in your camp, John. I thought this was kind of optional. This is a really old model, actually. The original terms, I think, were autonomy, mastery, transcendence, and those are the three universals, and they're sort of true. The transcendence part, what you're getting at is, well, there are different ways you can provide more incentive, transcendent incentive. One is you just pay them more money. They were arguing you give them more stake in the firm. You also talked about that, so give them rights, decision rights, and other things, and that definitely helps. The biggest problem to me actually is this is an education problem. Everybody. This is as old as the hills again. Everybody wants things to be easy to use, and that's fine if it's a one-off kind of thing and it's an administrative thing. If it's a real competence like reading and writing, it's just not going to be that easy, but the acquisition of that competence has enormous leverage. So, the joke Alan Kay, our great mentor and friend, used to make was, well, if, education thought the way to solve musical education was to put a piano in every classroom, but the music's not in the piano. And so if you just put if you just put AI in the organization, you're going to get the equivalent of chopsticks on the piano. If you want Mozart and Beethoven and really good music, you got to spend years literally developing the competence to do it. Now, if you do that, you have incredible power, but it takes some real effort and some real investment. And that's the real issue to me at the end of the day, is very few firms even begin to think about the amount of investment they should be making.
Yeah, I hear you. I still think that it amazes me how, we're asking people to automate their cognitive capital, and the idea that we would give them some capital-based return, whether that comes in salary.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It just, to me, is when I was a young man, that question was on the table, and it's completely off the table now, which I think is really interesting, along with decision rights about the nature of the shape of the work, which is also completely off the table, which amazes me. Yeah. Anyway, what'd you think?
Who are you asking?
Luda, sorry, Luda,
Oh.
what did you think?
Yeah, I was optional on this. I don't think the aware model is going to do anything, and even the change management. If your employees are all depressed and not adopting AI, you have a big problem to fry. And I agree with you, John. You need to look at motivations, all kinds of motivations to get it changed. But this model is not going to do it. So
All right.
I was optional.
All right, sorry to be so far over. Paul, you okay with optional?
I am. I mean, the topic is so important. I think the reality is you got tremendous pressure on executives push out. You have anxiety going up in the workforce. The people are treating this as, oh, we'll just spend $19 per month for a handful of employees here. They're not involved in core communications and everything else. So this is a really, really critical problem. I actually liked the article. It had some examples from Bank of New York and others, but I'll say optional for now. But boy, I'm really looking for better articles on this because.
Yeah.
John, you and I with 4 different companies this week and last week, the federal government, and they aren't thinking like this at all. And I know we don't like the model, but the holistic thinking about employee upskilling, anxiety management is absent.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I agree with you, Paul. This is like the critical issue of the day, but this article, it just doesn't give the tools.
Yeah, okay. I'll give it an important, because the topic is so important and underreported. It's an HBR. It is forwardable. All right, important it is. Akash, if you give us the tote board, that'd be great. All right, managing people. No, there we go. We have 1 essential, 2 importance, and 3 optionals. All right, have a great AI day, everybody. Any announcements or anything? I don't think so. No. All right. Take care. Bye-bye. See you in the morning. Bye.